All right, so we're going to talk about metrics. Yay! A great way to end the day. So let me just share with you how I put together this deck. What I try to do is put the notes on the presentation. You're going to get a copy of that. Let's just focus on the story. Basically, here's the NetNet. Here's the key points that we're going to talk about. What it is that you're actually measuring is information flow in a business cycle. You're not measuring transactions, because if you're measuring transactions, you're measuring the past. 2, it involves relationships among people. 3, these relationships among people evolve over time through interactions. The end result, which leads to a decision, and revenue is a byproduct of contracts. So what does that all mean? It means basically when I go into organizations and I look at data, sales data, I get a lot of product information, but most companies can't even give me the basic contract information. Now, why does that matter? It matters because if we're in the business of revenue is an accounting term to finance, and none of us here as sales leaders are accountants. When we sign up for revenue, we also sign up for bookings. Or not bookings, we sign up for accounts receivable, we sign up for collections. There's a whole bunch of other things that we sign up for. Our salespeople put together effort to get contracts. So with that as a frame of reference, I'm going to go through 3 things of what I'm going to tell you, and then we're going to put it all together. So number 1 is we're in a digital economy. If you heard the sales enablement presentation, you heard a little bit about that. There's 5 basic things. So number 1, growth comes from creating demand, not by responding to it. If we're building our business models to respond to demand, we're not growing. Second, markets don't write checks, customers write checks. So if we go to market, then we're sort of missing it. How do we go about going to customer? Third, customers do not demand your products. They don't. They demand, what they're doing is seeking business outcomes, and we don't have a lot of language for what that looks like. You create demand by helping your clients see what's possible. So therefore, what your forward-leading metrics are a lot based on how well you can articulate what that future world looks like. And then another thing that we do is, at the executive teams, we're stuck in terms of how we think about things through the old world. We have a go-to-market mindset. We think about product first. Then we think about the place or distribution mechanisms, all the distribution channels that we've got. We think about promoting and demand generation, et cetera, and we think about price. What I'm going to argue to you is that what we need to do is change our mindset. If we're going to thrive in the digital world, we need to think about helping our clients see what's possible, helping our clients see what those patterns look like, helping to give our clients paths to what their success looks like, and giving them the proof to be confident and execute it. The next thing that I'm going to tell you is that there are, I guess that was a build. Now I guess I cannot go back. There we go. There is a framework that we can create predictive measures against. I'm going to share it with you very simply. You're going to sit there and think that's too simple, or there's no way that's true. Hopefully I can prove that over the course of the conversation. But really, when we think about the world of customers, the first thing is, what is our total population of the wallet owners that we're after? How many of you know exactly who the wallet owner is for the company, for the vision that you're selling? My experience working with companies is very few of them actually do. So you can actually create a total population of who the wallet owner is, not the account, not the persona, who the specific wallet owner is. The second thing is, this is sort of simple, but if your salespeople aren't getting access to that wallet owner, it makes it pretty difficult. So how often are we getting access to those wallet owners? The third thing is, that executive needs to agree to say, Dan, why don't you come and explore further with us? That's a milestone. If we don't have them agree to participate with us, doesn't matter. The next challenge then would be, does the client have a shared vision of success of what it looks like? In other words, can they envision the combinations of products and services that you're providing? Can they envision that path or that problem outcome happening? And the last one is, are you making clear business cases? So here's sort of the challenge. The challenge is this doesn't sound like rocket science. How would we provide measures? The last thing is I'm going to tell you what you can do about this, and then we'll get into the story. Your path to success is define the business outcome for a targeted buyer. Clarify for them what's possible. Not what your products do, not what everybody else is doing, not some generic thing like the Internet of Things or anything like that. What is possible for them? Number two is segment out your wallet owners by value and your ability to access them. So for example, it might be, hey, this value that we're providing for CIOs of enterprise accounts, we might need to put more resource that than technology that we're providing for lower small companies. The next one is what you're doing is you have a value communication system. What I mean by that is, why are we looking at sales and marketing separately? Sales is a team sport, and if we are in the business of making our customers successful, let's look at that as an integrated cycle with our customers involved in it, not separate. The next part then is, let's talk about baselines. Why in the world are we benchmarking each other? A benchmark says a whole bunch of lemmings are jumping off a cliff, therefore I should too. We're not growing as industries in the most part, so why do we benchmark ourselves against everybody else? The issue is, how do you build a baseline of what you're currently doing and where do you want to get to? Number 5, define the client success patterns, common client success patterns. These are knowable. You solve problems for clients already. How do you help them see that? Because they probably don't have the criteria to evaluate what they need to be successful because they haven't solved those problems yet before. The next one is you want to be able to give them a clear path to success, not your buying cycle. What are the steps they need to follow to be successful? Then they'll figure out how to buy from you. And then the last thing then would be, how do you focus continuously on improving the metrics? So right now, the way that we have it set up is we have metrics that are, I was going to use colorful language, metrics that may not reflect reality, that we use to judge our salespeople for. Who's holding the metrics accountable, whether they're right or not? We're not doing that, and that's sort of if we want to make a system to drive revenue for our clients or drive success for our clients and then get revenue as a byproduct from it, we better be holding our metrics accountable too. So that's what I'm going to tell you. So now let's sort of take a step back. We've all heard one of the things that we know for sure is that we've heard management say over and over and over again, you can't manage what you don't measure. A lot of us accept that. Leonardo da Vinci said simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. And Albert Einstein said not everything that matters can be counted, not everything that can be counted matters. So is there conflict here? I think there is. I'll give you some examples. I know of a few CEOs. So one CEO that I talk with at a large company says that they track over 700 metrics for sales productivity. So that's definitely measuring. Can you manage to 700 metrics? I know another company that is really well known that tracks 2,138 metrics. And I said, well, how are you guys measuring that? Oh, we don't share that with management. Then why are you tracking it? Because we can. Great. That's awesome. So this is sort of the environment that we're dealing with. And when I start talking about metrics, people say, well, tell me what the answer is. Or, there's got to be something simpler. But simplicity is about you. So the whole comment about a benchmark is every single one of you have products and services that are differentiated. Why would you use forward-leaning metrics that don't reinforce your differentiation? Why do we do that? So let me just sort of talk to you about where I'm coming from. This is a view by the numbers. So over the years, by way of introduction, I have served as a VP of Sales and Marketing. Just so that you guys know where I'm coming from, I got fired by the board of directors because I didn't have the right metrics, and it was awful and took me 5 years to figure out why. So I've been in that view before. I have also been an industry analyst. I started the Forrester Sales Enablement practice, And in that role, we did lots and lots of interviews. This is where a lot of this data comes from. And I've served as a management consultant, working with on the sales ops side about these kinds of metrics. Let me tell you a little bit of story about this data and then pull it together, or these inputs. I have, or my team has surveyed 1,500 executive buyers. I've personally interviewed 200 of those buyers over a 4-year period of time. I have interacted with or dealt with or trained with over 2,500 salespeople, 500 sales managers, 100 sales leaders, 40 CEOs. We had our CEO do CEO level research, 80 CFOs that I've personally interviewed, worked with 45 sales ops leaders, worked with 20 different investors, whether they be private equity or whether they be funds or whether it be venture capitalists, and done analysis of over 500 industry analysis reports. So let's sort of break this down and tell it to the story. Who knows what this is a movie from? Let's shout it out. Help me out, gang. What's that? That's The Big Short, right? So here's the deal. I'm going to sort of cut to the chase here. I'm going to tell a story that if I were these guys, I'd be short in sales and marketing. So if you guys remember this scene, they're pretty aggressive going after the guy from, what was the bank? But anyway, the banker who was doing the tranches and everything like that. They were pretty aggressive. That's BS, blah, 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 blah. But what these guys did is instead of accepting all the data that was wrong, they said, let's find out. And what did they do? The most basic, simple thing. They went to go visit the places that had the mortgages and learned about the customers. And when they went and interviewed and found out that a lot of strippers had multiple houses, Steve Carell comes out and says, let's do it, I'm calling BS. BS on what? Everything. So let's talk about a story about what this looks like. So here's, this is a story of a tale of two cities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 3 examples of back into it. The first 2 are some insights. In 2009, so this is a story that starts a little ways away. In 2009, one of my investor friends who works at a fund said, hey, Scott, you know about sales. You know about BMC. We're getting ready to make an investment in BMC. Should we? And they had spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet. And they talked about how they were going to dominate the market for this, that, or the other. And I just said, I can't say that you should do it. And then they got very angry with me, my friends, for 20 years. They got very angry with me and treated me like I was an idiot because I didn't understand the metrics. In 2011, those same friends of mine took me out to lunch and asked me, how did I know? Because here's what happened between 2009 and 2011. So the CEO on the left, that's the CEO of Accenture. Their revenue grew 21% during that period of time, but their market valuation grew 113%. Good investment. BMC grew their revenues during that period of time 28%. Their market cap grew 0. Why? That 28% was acquired, 0 organic growth. To give you a frame of reference of how they thought about, how each of these CEOs thought about it, Accenture went and said, you know what, the world is changing so rapidly, we better rethink everything that we're doing. And they did rethink everything they're doing, and the market rewarded them. When Bob Beecham, who was the CEO at the time, obviously the investors were not pleased. So in his analysis, going back to the board, and you can go look back and look at all this information, he said at the Credit Suisse Technology Conference in 2011, our strategy was great. You know, we're managing technology in a hybrid world, it's what everybody is talking about, and we're really in a great sweet spot there. Why did they miss their number, guys? Who did they blame it on? What do you think? Thank you very much for the audience participation here. Who do you think they blamed it on, guys? Sales! But our execution isn't. It was very much of a hunter model with an aggressive strategy to make the number every quarter or depart. The reason that this didn't work is the vision that they were doing was selling to executives, but they had a transactional sales business model that they were instructing for everywhere. Those two don't fit. And that was what my instinct was telling me, but I had no metrics or measures to do it, and I got intimidated by my friends, and they're like, oh, they know, and they have all this data, and I didn't. So what we see is there's a lot of different viewpoints here about the relationships between how CEOs and CFOs prepare and invest to investors and what that information looks like. So much so that we got curious about that. We had our CEO, when I was at Forrester at the time, we had our CEO, George Colony, talk to other CEOs. What we did is we prepared him with one question to ask CEOs at Davos, and he got that information. Are you satisfied your sales force is getting your company to its strategic objectives? What do you think the answer was? No, we do not. Why is the answer? Most VPs of sales that I mentioned to said, well, it's because we're missing our quarterly numbers. You're not missing your quarterly numbers as far as the investors go. What it is you're not aligned with their future strategy. They know at some point in time that end state that's happening for what happened to Bob Beecham is going to run into them if the sales model doesn't match to it. A lot of us are missing that. So let's talk about some of the operational data that we create. We've got lots of metrics. We've got lots of benchmarks. We've got lots of data about lots of things. But let's look at about all the particular mechanics there. We have sales operations people coming up with metrics. We have measurement of product sales. We have measurement of a whole bunch of things. Let's talk about how well that looks like, and let's talk about another case. Here's a case, forgive the construct. I have to give some abstracts to be able to tell this story. This is a canvas that I use to help simplify this. But one of the clients that I work with, part of my thesis was, let's go hold the strategy people accountable. So this particular organization in 2009, so the little thundercloud there, they ran into some problems. So what it is, they hired one of the classic consulting companies, Bain, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, really doesn't matter. And what did they do? They analyzed the market forces. They looked at it by products the same way that we always do. And they said, you know what? You have a lot of companies, products that are there in the black. It really doesn't matter what they are. It's the same pattern. These things that aren't growing, what you need to do is be invested in the new products that are growing. And then in order to be able to invest in those new products that are growing, you need to be able to build sales overlays to be able to invest in those new products. So that means we need to get rid of some of the headcount that you currently have to put these new products in place. And then in order for us to get access to those markets that we want, we're going to invest in these market mover programs, these big, giant demand generation kinds of activities. And we're going to do it. And here's the formula for what it looks like. You can, sort of imagine all the tasks because a lot of us have been the recipient of this before. And to simplify what their sales channel is, they basically have client partners or strategic accounts and geographic salespeople. Forget about channels and everything like that. This was the strategy that they rolled out. This is what they did. Manager was super happy. They thought they were going to drive 8% organic growth. Well, let's investigate what happened by all the metrics that they used and all the metrics that we do use. So what actually went wrong and what happened? So the focal point is between 2009 and 2012. So this is the viewpoint. What you're seeing here is the total number of opportunities worked went up 43%. Strategy is working, right? Well, let's learn a little bit more. What they did find is, you know what? The people who are responsible for the new product growths, the sales force isn't selling it. Actually, only about 20% of the sales force is selling it. So we went and figured out which is the 20% of the sales force that's actually selling it. The other problem, I don't know what's wrong with my builds here. There we go. The other challenge was, along the way, maybe it's because it has something to do with the marketing programs. So the marketing programs were, of course, our salespeople are idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. We're giving them these great messages. They're super differentiated by everything that we're doing and by frame of reference. One of the messages that they were going out with was, bring your own device, as if you know anything about that, like that's differentiated. But that's what they thought because of all the work that they did, all the inputs that they got from analysts, and all the positioning documents that said what their products did and how they stacked up against everybody else. And clearly, it's your fault as salespeople. So who were the actual 20% that were actually selling the growth targets? They weren't the geographic reps. They were all the strategic account reps. So that was one interesting thing. So how come there wasn't more throughput out of those strategic account reps? Well, here's the deal. Look how burdened those strategic account reps were. So when I actually talk to them, AKA go visit Miami and find out who's investing in that, you actually talk to them, look how overburdened those strategic account groups are. These are people who have $200, $300 million books of business, and they already have access to the senior level people, and those senior level people like them. The conversation was, hey, we get it. We want to bring our own devices here. What is it that you guys do that helps us do it? Who thought that through? What does that look like? How are we going to do it? So that strategic client partner has a million other things to do, but he's like, okay, well, let's whiteboard out with your team what that would look like. Guess what? Because of the strategy of focusing on these growth products, they didn't have any sales engineers anymore that could do that. Those people were all cut out because we don't need to do that. We're going to grow by products. Then on top of that, look how much time is like, Scott, we don't really have any time to work with that client engagement because we spend 50% of our time reporting on how well we're currently doing with those books of business because we can't lose any of that 100 million or 200 million. And then on top of that, I've got a ton of administrative burden because we're trying to sell to all these accounts, but everybody wants status reports on us, and they want status reports on us on our funnel, not monthly now. Now we have weekly funnel calls, which is ridiculous. So what does it leave? At least 20% of the available time of the people that you want that can actually sell these things to actually work with the client to figure out what that success plan looks like. Then on top of that, the 80% of the reps who weren't selling that, none of those people have any training whatsoever to sell at that elevated level. All of these people know the world of the customers through those black products to those lower level people, so they thought all of the messaging, all the strategy was a bunch of BS. So basically what you've got is 20% of your sales force available for your growth product, of which you're only giving them 20% of the time to do it. What kind of throughput is that? It's not smart. So what was really the composition here of, so back to this 43%, because of all the activity that we measure, all the stuff that we measure, that's got to be good, right? They have to be growing. Here's the deal. The composition of those deals changed dramatically between 2009 and 2012. This particular company had 3 types of deals, and I'm oversimplifying. You can imagine how complicated this stuff can get. We have standard contracts, tailored contracts, and custom contracts. The growth of the custom contracts grew 67% between 2009 and 2012. Why? None of the customers wanted the individual growth products. They wanted everything to fit together because the business problems that they were solving were more and more complex. They didn't have the resources because they gutted it out. What was their growth? What was the result of the growth strategy that they implemented? A negative 16% decline in organic growth. For me, whose fault is that? That's the strategies group's fault. Who got blamed for it? You did, sales did. So, this is my, sort of the conclusion. This is the big short. These were the data points and organic growth decline. So let's figure out a little bit of a big aha. One big aha here is that when we are measuring data or analyzing data based on how well we did in the last quarter, what we're doing is we're showing a reflection of the past. Our markets are changing so quickly, how are we looking in the future and what metrics are we doing? The other thing too is increasing the velocity of pipeline inspection that's still in the present, but where is it that we're going? So the past is not a predictor of future results. It never has been, and it certainly won't be in a rapidly changing market that we are. For some reason, we've allowed that to become the frame of reference. So, putting all these pieces together here, I tried to show the different relationships about that. what I want to do is I want to challenge some viewpoints that we hold to be true. One belief that we hold to be true, that our pipelines look like funnels. So we think that we're going to make X% people aware, we're going to go get folks interested, they're going to desire our products, and then they're going to take action, and this is what we expect to see. Well, here's the deal. When I look at when we talk about the metrics that I did share, when you look at, do you have access to those people? Have they agreed to explore with it further? Where are you standing in terms of your vision? Do they have a match of vision? Or are you winning on a business case? Your pipelines look more like boa constrictors that are eating a pig than they do a funnel. Where are they stuck? They're stuck in that vision stage. The competitor that's killing all of us is NDI, No Decision Incorporated. It's because your clients don't know what they're doing. So the hole there, all those white parts, that's where your biggest hole of your pipeline is. You don't have the instrumentation to find it. So what do is you ratchet up later downstream all the reactive measures of the red that we must be losing to our competitors. And of course, it's because it's price or our product sucks. This is one reality that we need to look at. Another thing that we need to look at is a flawed assumption of performance and actually what the composition of our sales force is. I'm going to have to go through this a little bit quickly. I'm trying to give some time back. We're a little bit behind. But when our sales ops and our CFO people make forecasting assumptions, they say, hey, let's just assign headcount. So if I assign a quota to Kurt, I can think that Kurt's going to deliver the $1.5 million. And all salespeople perform uniformly. And that's how they think about deciding the distribution of salespeople. And customers all buy uniformly. They operate at an average $40,000 deal, and then that's the way that we plan. And it's easy to do capacity. What's wrong with these idiot salespeople? The reality, though, unfortunately, is if you look at this chart, what this is a distribution of revenue based on distribution of performing reps. In this one particular company, I'll show you the data behind it, is their top 20% of their customers represented 70% of their revenues. Their top 20% of their salespeople represented 67%. And it goes down from there. Look at what that looks like in terms of performance once you tier it that way. Just based on performance, not quota obtainment, because quotas are always, first of all, they're not standard from one company to the other, and they're never uniformly distributed. If you look at this, just think for a moment here. The rep that's Top Gun, that point number one, their average contribution to this company was $4.4 million of revenue each year. When you drop down to tier 2, 1.7. When you go and start messing and start implementing more mechanical constructs, you start to get attrition. We heard from the last one about attrition. Who is it that you're attriting? Are you getting rid of your bottom performers? Or are you getting rid of your top performers when you lose people, when you change and move to a more mechanical model? Well, in BMC's case, they lost all their top talent. So when somebody walks out the door that's $4.4 million of revenue and your common average performer is under $1 million, you have to replace 4 of them. But the CFO is not going to give you the budget for it because you've already accepted the fact that capacity is an average life cycle. So part of what we have to do is we got to recognize, I'm sorry this is busy, but again, the point is that these are notes. We need to start mapping out how complex our customers' worlds are. What we need to do is recognize that there's a way that we can map out what our customer success models look like. And we can identify an executive owner if we work backwards from them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into practice. So here's an example of how this actually worked out. And I'm going to go, I gave you guys 10 minutes back. I'm going to need 5 of it back. Sorry. But if you look at this particular company, here's the story. The story is a $50 million baseline this is a business unit within a bigger company. And there are different strategies on how we can move the needle on improving the revenue of our $50 million base. We have a renewals business. We have a price increase strategy, typically associated with the renewals. We have an audit. Many of our clients aren't actually using our software in this case, so let's audit them. Then we have a new license attachment to the existing clients that we're dealing with, and then sort of net new for new buyers or new logos or whatnot. So between the baseline in year one, and I know this because I know the VP of sales, he was like, look, I was looking at some numbers. We can kill it because we have so many people that aren't that are our audit. So we're going to concentrate our energies on auditing our clients, and we're going to grow that way. So here's what the results were in the first year. They grew 6.9%. That guy got a healthy raise. So they went, you can see the numbers here. They had 0% organic growth. They had 5% in new license sales, et cetera. So what happened in year two? What happened in year two was a decline of revenues by 6%. Why? The bad taste left in the existing customers of that aggressive audit left them unwilling to negotiate in terms of price increases. It left them unwilling to buy other additional licenses, so they had to back off of that. Because they went all in that play, they had no muscle memory for growth, so they weren't replacing any of those new licenses. So as a result, they lost 6% revenue. So what was the winning strategy here? The winning strategy here is what happened is between year 3 and year 2, how do we unlock 23.9% growth? What did we do here? We decided all of those other parts are all accounting activities. Let's reduce the amount of resources dedicated to it because renewing your customer should be easy. Let's concentrate on driving organic growth. So how do we get this kind of growth? Well, what happened was 80% of that 13 million came from one small team. You find the pockets of top performers, and you find ways to enable them. You have a portfolio of a lot of sales teams. They all tend to behave in these particular clusters, and they are identifiable. Within 18 months, that team went from $250,000 average deal size to $1.5 million. 9 months sales cycle time to 3 months. 15% close rate to 67% close rate. Performance to plan, 45% to 212%. How? Guess what we focused on, guys? Only these simple things that seem so stupid, but people don't do. Number one, their go-to-market strategy was that we're going to modernize modernization. I was like, what the heck does that mean? They're like, oh, we'll have to tell you. No. What does that mean? What buyer buys modernizing modernization? We can go through and find any kind of particular buzzword there. So the goal was what your clients really are looking for, so this is for state and local services, what they want are enabling services and how they enable their constituents. So then the next question was, okay, now we know our target buyer. We know our buyer in this particular case are state and local agency heads. Number one, do you know how many of them are? Nope. Well, let's find that out. Number two, how many meetings last year did you have with those people? 0. Well, maybe we should start having meetings with them there. How do you do that? If no one's ever met with a state and local agency head, why don't you do simulation training and role-playing to be able to get there? What happened after doing that one thing and staying maniacally focused and spending just 2 days focused on that one thing? Well, within a few months, not even a few months, actually, how long was that? After a 2-day program, yes, within six months, they had 100 meetings with those adult wallet owners. Now they had a different problem. Those adult wallet owners wanted to say, how did you help? So their sales process was, well, we're going to do an assessment of your products and technologies. Doesn't match to that buyer, does it? So they had to create a different way of engaging. So they worked on that different way of engaging. So they created this overall architecture where they worked on it with their professional services and the like. This was what helped get all the buy-in. So imagine how many different groups inside a government agency need to be involved. Then they built a coordinated engagement strategy, not to learn what their products and services were. By the way, there were 37 products and services that we had to include in this. there's no way salespeople would be able to configure that, so we needed to create a different kind of package for it. But in order to provide that coordination, what it was to teach the agency how to work together. That was the focal point. And that's what accelerated the deals. And then the business case took care of itself. Frankly, none of them would have known how to do the business case because the agencies didn't know how to build the business case. But they could get the money for it because at that altitude level, they set the budget. So going back, that's sort of the completion of the story. Just to go back to what do we share? The digital economy comes from creating demand. In the success scenario that I shared, demand isn't modernization. The demand isn't go to market. Demand is go to customer. What does your success look like? It's about giving your clients those particular patterns. It's about figuring out what it is that you want to do, and then building out, this is a framework that you can use to plot out what would be the binary objectives. Because the big key insight here is there's so many different ways that you can measure objectives, but at the end of the day, sales is an all-sum game. We either did get a meeting with somebody or we did not. Client verifiable. We either did get the client to agree to explore with us further or they did not. Client verifiable. They either did accept our vision or they did not. Client verifiable. They accepted our business case or they did not. Client verifiable. These are the things that allow us to track what we do and to provide the metrics and the forward leaning to be able to predict the success. So that's about it. That's the time that I've got. If you'd like to engage, please feel free to give me an email or send me a text. Happy to talk with you about it. Thank you very much for your time. I welcome your inputs. Thank you.